let that marinate just a little bit longer. I'm sure our next guest likes this music. I'm sure he's probably grooving to the tunes. Welcome back to Detroit's Morning Answer. Paul Steidler has spent years studying the lifeblood of American commerce. He is a senior fellow at the Lexington Institute and one of the clearest voices in the country on how federal policy affects technology, logistics, and the future of American manufacturing. His research spans the Federal Trade Commission, the U.S. Postal Service, supply chains, and now the technologies that I believe will define whether America remains an economic power or slips behind its global competitors. We are living in a moment where President Trump is pushing for a true American manufacturing revival. Plants are reopening, investment is coming back, the country is trying to rebuild what it lost through global outsourcing. Yet a quiet conversation is taking place in Washington that could slow or even stop that revival. The Department of Commerce is considering tariffs on robotics and industrial automation equipment. Industry leaders, manufacturing experts, and companies on the front lines are warning that such tariffs would raise costs, reduce productivity, and ultimately harm the American worker. Michigan sits right at the center of this. Our automotive sector depends on robotics. Our integrators, engineers, and manufacturing innovators depend on access to advanced automation. Companies like FANUC in Rochester Hills, Nachi Robotics in Novi, and the Association for Advancing Automation in Ann Arbor show that Michigan is not only a user of robotics, Michigan is a hub for robotics. Paul, welcome back to Detroit's Morning Answer.
It's great to be back with you, John. Hope you're well, my friend.
I am. Hey, Paul, I thought about the many times I've had you on the show, but I've never posed this question to you. And I said to me, what a travesty that I don't allow my audience to know who I'm talking to. So, Paul, for listeners who may not know your background, take a moment to describe who you are, what the Lexington Institute focuses on, and how you became so involved in the conversations around robotics, automation, and manufacturing policy.
Sure. And thank you, John, also for the kind introduction before. The Lexington Institute is a conservative think tank that was founded in 1998. We're in Arlington, Virginia, where the National Cemetery is, and right across the river from the swamp that is Washington, D.C. here. And we look at ways in which we look at issues predominantly related to national defense, technology, and energy. And there's a good deal of relationship between those issues, interaction between those issues. And we want to identify the policies that are going to work best and most efficiently so that the United States continues to have the unrivaled, dominant, superior, best economy and best place in the world to work dynamics that of any country out there. We certainly don't have that for everybody at this point, but I think with this administration and some other recent developments, we're making a good deal of progress there. And we just look to identify the appropriate role for government, and in many cases, it's no role at all to be involved in these different dynamics. We have a thriving private sector, which if it is directed and regulated accordingly, can bring about great wealth in all corners of the country.
I love it. Now, you have called these proposed robotic tariffs a major threat to American manufacturing revival. What prompted you to sound the alarm now?
Well, it's kind of a weird thing that came out from the Commerce Department back in September. They put out a inquiry, a request for information about possibly putting tariffs on robotics. So it's not a policy that's definite at this point, but it's something that is being flirted with, it's being contemplated. But the reality is that manufacturing today relies, and a whole host of other industries, by the way, but manufacturing especially relies on robotics for things to do highly specialized, complex tasks, certain types of welding, painting with industrial paints, some assembly, especially of smaller electronics. And the providers of this are almost all overseas companies we only get about 20% of our robotics from U.S. companies, and there is a thriving demand for this worldwide. So if you impose tariffs on this, you're going to dramatically increase the price for U.S. manufacturers, which is going to lead to either not deploying the technology or having higher prices that are going to have to be passed on, because the makers of this equipment are not going to swallow the cost. They've got international demand for it out there. And the better approach that can be taken on this is for the U.S. to expand its relationship with Japan economically, which is the biggest rate here in the U.S. And another thing is just to send a signal out there for U.S. companies to go and acquire foreign robotics companies, bring their operations either literally to the U.S. or set up some new operations here, and infuse them with the cash and capital so that American companies can do further R&D. Yeah. We're still in the very early stages of robotics, but China is well ahead of us on this. They deployed nearly 10 times as many robots last year as the U.S. did in business facilities. And if we don't catch up to them on that, they're going to, our manufacturing renaissance, which is gaining traction and moving along, but it's going to take time. If we don't realize that China is putting everything it has into developing and deploying robots, we're going to continue to be at a disadvantage with them. And that's going to be especially hard for working people, communities, and we're just not going to have as much of the buoyant, strong manufacturing that does so much good for so many communities.
You know, you've written about logistics and supply chain vulnerabilities for years. There's a national security and strategic risk to this. How does robotics fit into the national security conversation?
Well, the national security concerns were actually what prompted the Commerce Department to look at this, asking, are there national security risks by not having, by companies having to import so many robots? And the short answer is yes, there could be, but you're not going to solve that with tariffs as part of the solution that's out there. We have enormous problems with national security, with things being outsourced to other countries in our defense supply chain and other things. There's a committee in the House of Representatives that is looking at this, the Chinese Communist Party Committee, which is doing some great work in this regard. So we have to pull out all stops to get more manufacturing and especially more robotic manufacturing in the U.S. But, if we just impose the tariffs on it, we're going to pay more and we're going to lose access to the goods. And that at this point in time is just not a smart way to proceed.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I do know is that Michigan sits at the heart of American manufacturing. And when we have, I don't want to say it because I may say it wrong, but the FANUC, FANUC in Rochester Hills, we have Nachi Robotics and Novi. We have the global headquarters of the Association for Advancing Automation in Ann Arbor. How would these tariffs hit Michigan specifically?
Well, they're going to raise the price for imported products that come into play. They're going to raise costs for automakers, and oftentimes it's just specialized parts that are going to be imported. They're not all made in the same place. So even for U.S. Robotic manufacturers, there's going to be a hit that comes into play there. But I'll just point out, this is a very bright time, a very good time to be a U.S. maker of robotics, and we need things like the tax cuts that were continued over the summer as part of the one big beautiful bill. We need we need favorable treatment of depreciation and things along those lines to spur investment. But if companies, if the total price of robots and robotic items spikes, which it would under tariffs and under strong worldwide demand for it, you could just see an awful lot of reduction in important capital expenditures at a whole host of businesses in Michigan and elsewhere, and that should be concerning.
Many Americans, they fear that robotics will replace workers. You argue that robotics actually secures the manufacturing jobs. Explain the distinction, because I've heard some manufacturing people say the jobs are there. We just don't have the people to fill them because they don't have the skill set. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, when you have robotics, you don't lose the need for human workers. What you have is a tool that enables things to be done more effectively. And you need people who are going to program the robots, who are going to fix the robots, who are going to inspect them, who are going to install them, who are going to teach other people how to use them. It's another form of industrial machinery that is out there that enables much more efficient production of things. And that also goes, excuse me, John, to a bigger point here, which is that many, many manufacturing jobs today are highly skilled jobs. I mean, oftentimes they require a college education. This is work, and I probably don't need to inform your listeners in Michigan about this, but a lot of today's factories are not like those of the past. They're well lit. They are very heavy with tech equipment. They're very heavy with people who have skilled engineering and other technical applications and are finding ways to produce things. And those are, those are jobs and activities that we want to have here, and not and to return as much of that as we can from China and Vietnam and Bangladesh or wherever it happens to be, even from our friends in Canada.
Yeah. Paul Steidler, where can people find you, and where can they find the Lexington Institute should they want to learn more?
Yes, our website is lexingtoninstitute.org, lexingtoninstitute.org. They can also follow us on Twitter, which is LEXNEXTDC, LexNextDC. And they can also follow. They can also check out stuff on my name on Twitter at Paul Steidler. We'd love for folks to visit us and interact with us.
All right, he's the senior fellow at the Lexington Institute. Paul Steidler, thanks so much for joining us on Detroit's Morning Answer.
Thank you, John. Great to be with you.
As always, thank you. Detroit's Morning Answer. We'll be right back.